This episode of The Healthy CEO is brought to you by Authentic Health, the supplement company dedicated to helping you build a strong foundation for long-term health and vitality. At Authentic Health, every product is designed with one goal in mind: to protect your cells, support your body's resilience, and help you thrive in today's challenging environment. Whether you're a busy executive, entrepreneur, or simply someone committed to living well, their foundational supplement stack gives you the edge you need to stay at your best. And because you're a listener of The Healthy CEO, Authentic Health is giving you an exclusive discount. Just go to www.shopauthentic.health.com and use the promo code JASON at checkout to save on your order. Take the next step toward a healthier, stronger you with Authentic Health.
All right, Dr. George Ibrahim, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you, sir?
Fine, sir, and thank you very much for having me.
Well, man, the pleasure's all mine because I get to geek out with a really smart guy that is doing a lot of the work that I find fascinating. And like we talked about a little bit before I hit record, I've never really done a deep dive on your specialty, which is hormone replacement. And I want to talk menopause. Now, I actually have had a couple of guests on to talk about menopause.
Okay.
But with regard to hormone replacement therapy for men, I have never really done a deep dive on that. So I'm really excited about this conversation. But here's where I want to start. Knowing your background, I'm going to let you tell the story. When I was doing the research and learned how you ended up focusing from one line of medicine, from one discipline to what you're doing now, I got to say, first of all, how admirable that it is, and people know what I'm talking about whenever you get into the story. But we hear a lot of guys, like we were talking about my buddy Gus Vickery and my business partner, that primary care docs that start to do more integrative and functional medicine. Peter Attia, for crying out loud, surgeon to longevity doc. We know how that trajectory goes. Yours was much different. So if you wouldn't mind, let's just start as to how you got into what we're going to be talking about today, which is regenerative medicine, hormone replacement therapy, like I said, longevity, health span. Take us through that journey that led you to this place, Doc.
I'll try not to make it boring. Developed multiple sclerosis. Well, first of all, I was a Duke trained and a Duke clinical professor of urology with the specialization in prostate cancer. And so I operated, and I taught residents how to operate, and everything was going along well and good. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, treated it, didn't really have any problems, but it progresses as time goes on. And it got to the point where I realized I did not want to hurt a patient due to my infirmity, and pride. I wanted to quit before somebody got hurt because of my technical skills not being what they needed to be as a good surgeon. So I bowed out of practicing urology. Did some other things, started a wine company, got an MBA, and created a few other businesses. But yeah, I was bored. I mean, I love medicine. I especially love teaching. And one of my fraternity brothers was playing golf with a retired OBGYN who had been using bioidentical hormones since the day that they were available. Smart guy. And he was saying, Hayes, every time I turn on the radio or open up the paper, there's another dang on hormone doctor. They don't know what they're doing. They're unethical. They overcharge. I want to start teaching other doctors how to do this. And my fraternity brother stopped his backswing, looked at him and said, I got somebody for you. He's a Duke trained urologist. And I know he's bored. Y'all got to get together. And we did. And that's how I learned hormones. We ended up not forming a business together, but I did extensive, like an internship with him. And that's what got me into hormones. And, the same hormones that are in men are in women. I mean, as a urologist, we learn about both men and women and the private parts thereof, and we learn their hormones. And, but we don't learn how to manage their hormones. And that's what led me to this new path.
So how much at that time, now, how old were you at that time?
I'm 63 right now, so 15 years ago.
Okay. So I asked and that makes a lot of sense because that's where you're starting to hit that pivotal time, which I know, and I want you to talk about this, about how, let's just focus on men for a minute here. Correct me if I'm wrong, around 21 to 25, men's testosterone levels start to just kind of on a downward slide, right? And then I'm 50. And so I'm really in that, okay. And right now my levels are holding pretty strong. And, and folks, we're going to get real. We're just going to be real with each other today, because we're going to talk about signs of good testosterone levels. And, that's always going to lead to the morning wood conversation.
Yep.
And so far, so good for me. But I also know that I'm getting to that point where I'm going to probably be faced with the decision of, do I start doing some replacement, because I'm just going to feel energy levels low.
Mhm.
I'm going to continue to want to build that lean body mass to prevent injury and increase bone density, all these things that we want to do for longevity. So talk to us about, whenever you were at that age of life, did you reflect on it for yourself? And did you start saying, and how did your journey with hormone replacement therapy, did it begin? Was it something that you learned and then thought, well, I'm going to try this, or like, oh my gosh, what did it do for your own personal health?
I'll give you an example of my own personal health later in this part of this discussion, because they all did come together, to begin. I mean, at the same time.
Okay.
So here's how I like to tell, like, especially when I'm talking to men, our bodies today in 2025 are very similar. I mean, if not almost identical to the body of a caveman. Caveman was, we were all designed to procreate, make babies, foster the children, and then get out of the way. Not take up the food, not eat the food or anything like that. So cavemen and women died in their early to mid 20s. I mean, excuse me, 30s. Our hormonal peak is in our early to mid 20s, and it's downhill from then. And that means it's downhill for every single man. So it's about 1 to 4% a year. So if you are a banker and you know how to compound, you realize that 30 years afterwards, by the age of 50, you're at 1/2 of your peak testosterone level. Doesn't matter how healthy you are, however much exercise you do, whatever crazy diet you might be on, you cannot stop the clock from ticking or the calendar from turning. By the time you're 60, you're at 1/3. By the time you're 70, you're at 1/4 of what you were at your peak. Now, you can drive your Maserati with the tires half inflated. I mean, it's going to drive, but it's not going to perform. And neither is the man in his 50s with his testosterone half of what it was. Yeah, he'll be able to function, but is he really performing? You can't. I mean, it's not like the levels that you really want to be. So when I started learning all of this, I mean, one of my things was I had started having my old man physicals. That, when we start middle age, you go see the doctor just because you're over 50. And he started going down some questions. It's called a review of systems. Every doctor understands this. And I'm sitting there and I'm knowing where the next question is going if I answer this or that. And I look at him and I go, Tom, I know where you're going. We went to the same med school. I go, I am not boo-hoo. He goes, well, it's a bad name for a disease, but if you know where we're going with this, answer me in your head and you tell me. And I answered in my head and I looked at him and go, okay, all right, you call me depressed, but puts me on Wellbutrin. Well, I get started doing the hormones at the same time, because now I'm learning about hormone replacement, and I started doing hormones not long after that. Well, once I was learning about the hormones, I found out that there's 2 times the 2 biggest points if you look at the graphs of when clinical depression is diagnosed, is around the age of 18 or teenage years, and then middle age, like 50. 2 big hormonal changes in time. I wondered to myself, because what I was learning was a lot of these mid-age depression diagnoses might be due to lack of hormones. So I quit my antidepressants. I waited about 6 weeks, because that's how long it takes to get out of your system. And I asked my former spouse, how's my mood? She goes, oh, it's great. Why? So, well, I quit taking my antidepressants about 6 weeks ago. And her eyes got real big, but then she realized the monster's not come back. He's actually nicer than he was, when he was on his meds. I mean, this is great. So that was my personal, aha there.
It's interesting. I went down the exact same path, albeit younger. I was in graduate school, stressed out, depressed, and just lethargic. And I went to my primary care doc, who now is, now she left primary care and is only doing elective stuff, including low T. She has a low T clinic here. And And she put me on, it wasn't well, I think she put me on, it might've been Wellbutrin. I don't think it was, is Prozac. It's the only time I've ever taken an antidepressant in my life. And it didn't last long. I was like, this just didn't for me. And then she mentioned the same thing. She said, well, you might want to try hormone replacement therapy. And because my testosterone levels, lo and behold, were pretty low. And this was about right before I turned 40, a couple of years before I turned 40, I guess. And the difference was stark between like the meds weren't really doing anything. I did the pellets under my skin on my butt, and I could tell an immediate difference. Now, I ended up getting off of them. Now, I'd made a lot of changes from that time to wean myself off. I thought I was a little young at that point, Doc. I wanted to push this as long as I could. I didn't know what I know now. And so I pushed it off, and I do not drink alcohol anymore. I changed my diet significantly. My workouts were always pretty much, my training was pretty much the same, but I haven't gone back on it, but I know I'm going to have to reevaluate at some point for all the reasons you just described. But I almost had the exact same journey. And I think that's one of the things that's important about this conversation, because I guarantee you there's a lot of guys that are listening to this. I know members of my family that have been given drugs, and I'm not saying for or against, but it's kind of just like a kind of a step of which step is first. They probably are taking the antidepressants when, in fact, if they could just get their testosterone levels raised a little bit better, their mood, their mindset,
Yeah,
everything would be a lot more positively impacted, right?
it's absolute. And a lot of people think that, raising testosterone levels to what I call optimal levels, we're not,
Mm.
going crazy, is going to lead to mean men. No, what you see is the exact opposite. Men tend to become much nicer. They become more loving. They are looking at their partner, like he looked at her when they first started dating. I mean, it's better for everybody in the family.
Yeah. Now I want to ask you this. Let's dispel some myths or confirm
Right?
some stuff with caveats or whatever. So a lot, and I'll tell you, this is where I have been on this for most of my life until I really started studying the science. I used to believe I'm not going to do any testosterone replacement theory of any kind or therapy of any kind, because if my body, if I teach my body that I'm going to get it from an external source, then it will just shut down and stop making it, and it'll deplete even faster because it thinks, well, something's coming in from the outside. You don't need me anymore. True or false, or a little bit of both? What do you say?
Well, a little bit of both. First of
Okay.
all, got to remember, go back to what I said earlier. Now, that just because I said doesn't mean it's real or true, but I'm pretty sure it is. Our bodies aren't designed. We live to 100 now, but our bodies, our gonads especially, yeah, we can father children later in life, but women can't. And
Okay.
and human women are the only mammalian species that dies without being able to reproduce. Every other mammalian species, except one pod of killer whales, is able to reproduce until they die of old age. Humans now live to 100. Women stop being able to, deliver. Get pregnant, around the age of 50. An older man is theoretically possible, but you've outlived your gonadal age for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
So this idea of holding things off, there's no reason to. Now, will your testicles get lazy if it sees that that you're getting exogenous testosterone? Yeah, men are lazy. Testicles are lazy. They will stop producing. That doesn't mean they will stop forever. If you stop testosterone, boom, a few days later, a few weeks later, your brain kicks in. It secretes another hormone that tells the testicles, all right, guys, you got to get to work again, and the testicles start to work, albeit at that older age. In other words, you're not going to lose anything by getting on testosterone. The only thing you will lose is the ability, you may decrease the possibility of fathering a child while you're on testosterone, but we have ways of preventing that with a different hormone that will continue to stimulate your testicles. If that's not too long of an answer, I apologize if
No,
it is.
no, that's perfect. And that's what I'm trying to think of, that guy out there listening, Doc, that is just kind of heard, has seen the low T ads, has seen the clinical ads, and they don't know the difference. And that brings up a good question. They don't know the difference between old school Winstrol and Diebol or
Oh
whatever,
God. Yeah.
all the crazy old stuff from back whenever you'd see in the gyms versus this clinically prescribed, much more managed replacement therapy. So let's walk through some of that. That for that guy out there, it's like, what is, well, now just because doctors have adopted steroids, it's okay, but we know that's not the case. Kind of set that
Well,
straight.
first of all, your testicles are making steroids, I mean, testosterone for years. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the word steroid has a bad connotation. There are some steroids that are not something I would ever write for. What we write for is what your gonads make. The lab cannot tell the difference between if I had a castrated patient that I was giving testosterone and and his twin brother that had testicles and they both gave blood and the tubes got mixed up, the lab couldn't tell you which one came from which brother. My testosterone or the testosterone I'm putting in him or the one whose testicles are making it for himself.
Okay. Now, here's another question. So let's say that you've got that guy out there that is a little older. I mean, look, people are marrying older in
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's say that guy's waited till he's 40 to
Okay.
get married, either the first or the second time, and has never fathered children. But now he's at this kind of crossroads of like, he's married a woman that she's in her 30s. They want to have kiddos together. And one, I mean, he's still able to function in the bed, but he also realizes it's time to start doing some hormone replacement therapy. Is this going to do anything to negate or enhance, or just going to be kind of a net zero impact on his fertility?
I'm going to give you a true example. My son-in-law, my daughter gets married. My son-in-law has low T symptoms. I get his levels. They're in the dirt, but I want grandkids. There's a vested interest in this in me. If the hormone practitioner knows what they're doing, there are ways of keeping the testicles employed and doing their job while giving more exogenous testosterone. I can get into the details if you want me to, or I can leave it at that. In other words, I can do something to ensure that those testicles are going to continue to make not only their own testosterone, albeit not enough, but also make sperm. Spermatogenesis will continue. I've got two grandkids from my daughter and her husband, and he's been on testosterone throughout the whole journey.
I want to know. I want the details. What do you do?
Right? Human choriogonadotropin is another hormone in our body that tells the testicles to make to work. And
Okay.
so if you employ human HCG, so not to be confused with growth hormone, human choriogonadotropin, if you do that alongside of exogenous testosterone, the testicles will not shut down. They will continue to produce sperm and to produce whatever amount of testosterone they were producing in the first place, which wasn't much, which is why I did the exogenous.
Very good. Okay. Now I kind of went it like I didn't mean to make that a lightning round, but I just this all strikes. I mean, this really piques my interest for a lot of reasons, personally, and just because like I told you before,
Yeah.
I geek out on this stuff. Let's go back just a little bit at the very kind of rudimentary level. At 50 years old, and I haven't had my levels tested in quite a while. Probably need to, but it takes the folks through kind of those pivotal years. You turn 40, you turn 50. What number should we be looking for in our testosterone levels, and where are you going to be able to treat us to get us? Or and is it a general? Is it specific to you? Walk us through that.
I am glad you asked that. And a lot of the people out there think, well, I thought you're a smart Duke doctor. Aren't you using science? Yeah, I'm using science. I'm also using with the reality of things. It's not about a lab value. It's about how you feel. And there are guys that feel like crap at 900 and they want to be at 1250, 30. There are guys that anything above 700 makes them antsy. If you're sitting there listless, falling asleep after dinner, not having morning wood, not looking at your partner with some lust in your eye, getting that belly fat, you're hitting the gym, but you just can't seem to put on muscle mass. Your recovery time is increasing every year. You need testosterone. To be honest, only because I have to monitor it because testosterone is controlled. Except for the initial lab value, I don't need to see another testosterone level after that. It's your symptoms, what you tell me that makes a difference. Any person thinking that we dose or change our management based on the labs after the initial treatment starts is crazy. And then you also got to know the pharmacokinetics. There's no such thing as a level testosterone level once you start doing exogenous. And even during your regular life, there's always a rhythm. Well, when you do exogenous testosterone, there's going to be I don't know how this works in a camera, but there's going to be a rise, a peak, and then it's going to drop. And then you do your next dose, no matter whether it's implants, pellets, creams, or injections, it's always a rise and a drop. So there's no such thing as keeping somebody's testosterone at XYZ level. The answer is, "How you been feeling since we started you?" "Well, doc, I've been feeling great." Well, then that means we hit the right dose on the head.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And so who is kind of that who's that guy that you're seeing mostly? Like what age is it? Is there like a standard age? I mean, again, in our 20s, crap, we can just perform in all sorts of ways better when we're in our early 20s. And then all of a sudden you start to taper off. When should a guy come in based on how he's feeling? Now, and here's a little bit better. I mean, if you got some big, excuse the expression, we got some big fat ass that drinks 5 days a week,
Yeah, yeah,
smokes. Just those are health issues in addition that
yeah.
he's just compounded the problem. But let's say that this is a member of this audience, and this audience is a pretty healthy and thoughtful audience. They're not overweight. They still have good insulin sensitivity. They're not 75, 80 years old. They're kind of in that sweet spot of 40 to
It
50,
Yep.
but they can't get it up. They don't have morning wood. What are some of the other things that they could be looking for internally in the way they feel that might lead them to at least explore some of your methodologies?
Well, so they come in regular 2 different ways usually. Let's take the 60-year-old lady who's in menopause. She starts seeing me. She's married to a man that's at least her age or maybe older. She starts seeing me, all of a sudden, she's frisky, she's feeling good, she's got energy, she wants to fool around, and there he is falling asleep after dinner, and, he can't perform. So she's bringing him in. Now, when I first started about, 13 years ago, these men would come in with their arms crossed like, I don't need any of this, I'm fine." But I'd say, Just look, if you don't like it, stop. But let's give it a chance. At least for her, just you humor her. And of course, once I got started, things picked up at home. They were loving it. Um, then the younger guys, they've been raised with Viagra commercials, and that's huge. Not because they're deficient in Viagra, they're not. When they were in their 20s, Viagra hadn't been invented yet. Most of them, I don't think. And they could get it up 3, 4 times a night every night. Now they're in their 40s or 50s. Well, they're not Viagra deficient, they're testosterone deficient. But the Viagra commercials and Cialis commercials made men realize it was okay to go talk to a provider about those kind of problems. Beforehand, a man would never admit it.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
while again, I rarely prescribe Viagra as a first choice, if ever, it at least has woken men up or introduced a whole generation of men to the idea that there's something we can do about this.
Now, I mentioned it early on in this conversation about morning wood. And, Brian Johnson, for anybody that's followed Brian Johnson, the blueprint guy, and, a lot of the longevity guys, I think Brian's probably taught more about focusing on monitoring his wood more than anybody else. But talk through that because it sounds like just one of those silly natural things that we kind of laugh about in movies and stuff. When the dude wakes up and he's got a heart on, but it's very indicative. And I look, I wear an Aura ring and I'm a little bit OCD.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. And my wife, God bless her, she's going to be so mad at me for giving just this much information. But I'll tell you, Doc, if I don't wake up, with that wood, I start going, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I've got to call Dr. Ibrahim. But just talk about why it is important to pay attention to those little signals that our body gives off.
All right. So naturally, you're not on hormones. You haven't seen anybody like me. Naturally, the circadian rhythm, our testosterone level, for whatever reason, our creator figured out was that it's going to peak very early in the morning. I mean, so let's just say 4 a.m., 5 a.m., something like that. Whether that's because the creator wanted us to procreate before the sun came up and whatever. All right. Now, as you get older, you're starting to lose the levels that are the rhythm's going to happen with. But as you get older, these levels are down lower. Well, what's wild is when you add exogenous testosterone, yeah, it does follow an overall big curve like this, but there are circadian rhythms within it. Um, so I forgot where you were going from the beginning, but losing your morning wood is telling you you're losing your overall testosterone um, catalog or what you got available to pull from. Does that make any sense?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I think too, it's important for guys. And the thing is, what I'm really wanting to get at is just get guys in tune with their bodies. To your point, like, okay, I don't have to look at levels. I want to know how you feel. I think it's so important. And this is one of the things that I've learned since I've really started dialing in to trying to understand my own health for longevity's sake, just for, I want to be here for my great grandkids, is listening to your body signals. One of them, when it comes to, to hormones or testosterone, is your morning wood. What are some other things? Is it, and I think too, this is where I was really wanting to go with this real quick, is I think a lot of guys out there think I'm just not attracted to my wife anymore. And that can cause bigger problems when in fact,
Dude,
well, maybe you're attracted to her. You just don't want to make love to her because you don't have the right chemical, your hormones are out of whack.
you don't have the right hormones. You've lost your confidence. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, that's a huge thing, and we all know this, the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think about it and you're not gonna be able to have it or get it up, there's a damn good chance you're not gonna be able to get it up. Alright, there's some things, though, on labs, so I don't mean to poo-poo them completely, but there's some things that are hidden in lab reports that you may or may not be feeling as a man that are as important as testosterone. So, and this is where primary care docs don't necessarily they're gonna order these labs, nor did I when I was a urologist. First of all, let's talk about testosterone and free testosterone. Total testosterone is like net worth. All right. It doesn't really mean that much because what's the cash you have on hand? That's what matters. Free testosterone is the cash on hand. So you can be a farmer, have a huge net worth, all this land and value, not have a damn thing in the bank. Cash is free testosterone. That's what's available to do its job. Why might it not be available? Well, there's another hormone called sex hormone binding globulin. It binds testosterone. If it's bound, it's not going to work. You can't spend that money. So you can have a guy with a high total testosterone, and then we need to talk about the labs before this thing ends. The lab values. I'll explain that more in detail. You can have a guy with a high total testosterone, but his SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, is so high, his free testosterone is in the dirt. If the primary care doc only ordered the total testosterone, he's going to miss that. Another one, and I see this mostly from men who are being treated by other doctors with testosterone replacement, but don't understand that men convert testosterone to estrogen. Men need some estrogen. We need it for our bone density, and we need it for our memory. But too much estrogen leads to man boobs, belly fat, and cardiac issues, and emotional issues. So if a guy's getting testosterone without proper estrogen control, either through the use of supplements or certain prescription medications, the typical story is, "Doc, man, it worked for about 6 weeks. I feel great. Then, I started feeling the dumps." And I'd interrupt and go, "Would you start crying at dog food commercials?" He'd go, yeah, I go, "Well, did it give you anything for your estrogen control?" Blank look. "Did you get a little pill that you took like half a pill once or twice a week?" "No." I get his estrogen is like 120, higher than his wife's ever. So anyway, um, so there's more than just testosterone when it comes to real hormone values, the way what we look at.
Well, I love that because that means that what we're talking about here, and again, just to sum up in my East Texas vernacular, is you're taking a whole holistic approach to this. Instead, it's not just
Yeah.
as easy as coming in and looking at testosterone levels, going, well, you're low, you're high, boom, you're out. It's much more involved than that. So that leads me into the next question, which is, okay, you have this avatar dude that walks through the door. He says, I mean, take me for instance, I'm 50 years old, and let's say I start feeling that I'm a little bit more lethargic. I'm not wanting to have sex as often. And so I've decided, Dr. Ibrahim, I listen to the Jason Wright show. I believe in what you're saying. Help me. Where take me through that journey. What's
Okay.
that going to look?
All right. So we're gonna get we're gonna get this guy's baseline labs. Biggest reason I have to, like I said earlier, because these hormones are controlled. Now, let me tell you what I'm gonna do when I sit down with him with the lab report. You're gonna get this lab report, and on one side, you're gonna have your values, and on the other side of the page, there's gonna be something called reference interval. All right. Doesn't say normal, it says reference interval. That's defined as 2 standard deviations around the mean, which is 95% of everybody they test.
Okay.
So these 2 numbers, let's call them 215 and 946, I think is what my current lab uses. 215 is at 2.5 percentile. 946 is at 97.5 percentile. That means there's only 5% on either side, 2.5 on each side. The report does not turn to the letter L and say low until you're below 2.5 percentile. This is huge. Many doctors, I'll have patients come in and say, "Doc, I went to see my primary care doc. He got my levels. He said they were normal." I go, "Well, the report doesn't say normal. It says reference interval, and it fell within the reference interval. But if you're at 3 percentile, that's crap. You wouldn't drive your car across the country with only 3% of the oil in the crankcase. Hell no.
Right.
All right.
Right.
But the lab report doesn't say L, or whichever one of these says L. And so the primary care doc might, and this is no diss to primary care doc. My daughter, who practices with me, is a primary care doc. She never learned this in med school either. I didn't learn it. She didn't learn it. So you gotta look at where the values fall. And if it falls down on that low end and they've got these symptoms, they've got low testosterone syndrome. I mean, it's pure and simple. If they are waiting for the thing to say L, they are below 2.5%.
Wow. Wow. And that brings up something that I got to be honest with you, that I took so much for granted, is those your blood panels and the blood work, and having someone like you to decipher them. Because, and I didn't know this. You mentioned going to a PCP, and again, we're not here to bash
Yeah, at
PCPs.
all. They're
Good work.
fantastic.
Right. But you go to one, and essentially the blood panel you get done it comes out on a freaking PDF. It's got very general ranges for every single category. To your point, if you don't know what to ask for to be included, it will not. And it looks about the same as what you probably saw 30 years ago in practice.
Yeah.
It just, until you go to someone like yourself that can truly say, wait a minute, we got to dig down into this and figure out what this means for you specifically. So many people miss so much on those panels.
And I'll be honest about whenever they were started to require that the lab send the patient's lab reports as big as, because it's unfair to the patient. Why are my eosinophils high? Because
Right.
it's allergy season. You're fine. PSA values, that's another example. I'm a urologist. I don't wait for it to turn to the letter H. I'm looking at patterns. Cardiac isoenzymes, I can't read them, but to a cardiologist, they can. It's like Braille to Helen Keller. I mean, so these lab values to the layperson, and the layperson will be freaking out, wondering what there's an L or an H, and then they don't realize, well, the L in this area is actually what we're shooting for, or the H
Right.
in this area is the goal. You're paying for this.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I don't know if that answered the lab question correctly, but
Well, it does.
let the provider interpret the labs.
100%, and make sure it is a provider that understands what the
Yep,
hell that you
yep.
really need to see. That's the thing that just it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, you talking about in your medical training, how little information was giving on hormones, how little the standard education is on around nutrition for docs. There's so many things that especially as we're moving into this age of where guys like you and guys like my buddy Gus and all these other docs that are focusing on integrative health are not considered whack jobs or kind of weirdos. No, people are now understanding there's this thing we've lived in a sick care versus healthcare system for so many years. So it's going to take understanding these things that beforehand we just didn't even focus on.
Well, and it's gaining like what I do. When I first started, people would say to me, "What are you doing now?" And I tell them, and if they were healthcare provider or doctor, yeah, I knew that they were sitting there rolling their eyes or thinking to themselves, he's a quack or this is voodoo." Well, now it's becoming more and more acceptable. People realizing that there are folks that are coming into this kind of practice that do know what they're talking about. Yeah, there are some charlatans out there, but there are more and more people that are taking the time and learning the true science, not just going to literally in the old days, I'd see these ads, come to Orlando for the weekend, start your hormone practice on Monday. No, I mean, you can't learn how to do something in a weekend.
Right.
Um, and the other thing is, like I said earlier, I stay in my sandbox. If somebody needs the right kind of nutrition, I'm going to send them to somebody that's what they do all day long. If they need to go to a real doctor, well, people get upset when I don't call myself a real doctor anymore, but when I want to send them to a real doctor like Gus, that's where they need to go because he knows that kind of medicine better than I do. I'm not going to try to treat somebody's congestive heart failure.
Right. Right. Well, now let me ask you this. So one of the things that always scares me to death about, I guess, is blood pressure medicine. I always hear if once you get on blood pressure medicine, you have to stay on it for the rest of your life. So, by God, I'm trying to stay off blood pressure. I don't take any meds, and I want to stay that way as long as I possibly can. Again, I'm not against pharmaceuticals, but I want to push them off and keep them at bay as long as I possibly can. When it comes to hormone therapy, once I start down this road, does that mean I'm signing on forever and at the same rates? Does it change? Does that mean that you and I, once we start our relationship, we're in it till death do us part? How does that look?
Um, First of all, your testicles aren't going to get any better.
Right.
So if it's time for you to start, then you might as well just realize you're never going to get better than that baseline the day you walked in the door. So, you know, does that mean you're going to have to do it the rest of your life? No, you can quit anytime you want to. Why would you? If you go to Google Scholar, which is a search engine for academicians, scientists, physicians, you type in two terms, testosterone and morbidity, morbidity. Morbidity means major disease. Type those two terms in, hit the return button. You're going to see thousands of articles that pop up. And now they're starting even to include women in these articles. And the gestalt or the overall picture is going to be low levels of testosterone lead to higher incidences of, and then just fill in the blank. Because
Wow.
it's everything from mental diseases to cancers to cardiac issues. It's life saving. Go to women. Um, Women don't have heart attacks before menopause. Women don't get osteoporosis before menopause. After menopause, a woman's risk of a heart attack is identical to a man her age.
I did
That's
not know
huge.
that.
That is
Yeah.
huge. What's the largest, the biggest cause of death amongst women in America? Cardiac disease, not breast cancer, cardiac disease. Why a woman's not on testosterone, estrogen after menopause is beyond me. I mean, because it's it beats not smoking, it beats obesity, it beats not working out. I mean, in other words, you can be fat, smoke, and sedentary, but if you're taking estrogen, your chance of a heart attack as a woman is less than the one who's in shape, works out, XYZ, but she's not on estrogen replacement. So there's some life-saving benefits of these hormones, both ways, men and women.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, now, I know for illustrative purposes, you were talking about that woman compared to she's not on estrogen versus the one that's unhealthy. But what are some things that, like, even for your patients, to maintain a healthy lifestyle that increases testosterone in addition to what you're doing with your therapy? What are some things that men can do to naturally, alongside you in parallel, keep their testosterone levels at the highest level they can possibly be, given their age, their environment, and that sort of thing?
The biggest thing, one of the biggest is working out,
Yeah.
especially weight training. That definitely will help promote testosterone production as well as growth hormone production.
Okay. Yeah. That's
But
what I've
again,
noticed.
it does help, but let's go back to the caveman thing. That you can only beat a horse so much as it gets older. I mean, you can only expect so much out of that older horse. There's so much you can expect out of an older man. His testicles were not really designed to go 100 years.
Right. Right. Well, I can tell you firsthand on that one. If I've ever backed off of doing like, I don't do crazy resistance training anymore, but I do still do deadlifts. I do squats,
Mhm.
a lot of pull ups. Man, and if I don't, I can tell it has a profound impact. What about like just some of the, I know we didn't talk nutrition and that's not your lane, but like for you, what are you eating? Is it a lot of red meat? Is it making sure your proteins as high as possible? What are those things that you're taking in to your body to make sure that, again, you're just hedging your bets on
Not
testosterone
well,
production?
mine's not really because I'm doing exogenous testosterone, so I'm not really worried about my diet as helping me out on the testosterone
Okay.
front. I'm doing it more on the healthy front, the vanity front. I was fat at one time. I learned right away that the evil is sugar and
Mm,
fat and protein is good. So, I'm a paleo guy. Yeah, purity and simple. And I'm doing that again, like I said, more for because I believe in the paleo concept. I think sugars are horrendous and the cause of tons of diseases, and I like how it works as far as I can eat as much as I want and not worry about getting fat.
this may sound like a crazy question, but I'm genuinely curious. Does the amount of sex you have play any impact on whether you're depleting or increasing testosterone production?
Well,
Or does it is it
I'm gonna do this, just for the clip. You need to have as much sex as possible because that helps your health and your cardiac and blah, blah, blah. Um, I
yeah,
don't
we're
know.
gonna take that clip and send it to my wife. No.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't give you a, reference, other than more exercise is good.
There you go. There you go. I like it. And I think that's the best. That's a fun exercise there. Any guy
I
that's
mean I
not
mean, who can tell you that getting on a cycle and spinning or going at it, if you get worked up, you get worked up.
I like it. I like it. Now, is there ever a period of time my dad is 73. My dad's 73. So my dad's 73. He's not as active as he once was. Is there ever a point where it's like, nah, you're just too old. You're not going to see any of the benefits? Or do you say, hell no, I don't care how old you are. You can still benefit from increased testosterone production?
Go back to Google Scholar, put in the terms testosterone and morbidity, look at the answer to that. Why would you quit?
Okay.
Every across the board, low levels increase problems, high
Okay.
levels decrease problems. Let me talk real quick though about the 73-year-old and the worry about prostate cancer because I know
Mm,
that a lot of people have that. All right, remember I'm a prostate cancer expert. That was what my fellowship was in. I taught how to take out prostate cancers when I was practicing urology. Men, usually from Florida, because Asheville, our location, we have a lot of snowbirds. They'd be up here and they'd say, hey doc, while I'm here, can I get my testosterone shot?" And I go, "Hell no. I'm not about to throw gasoline on what could be a prostate cancer fire." I was wrong. I was like, "What happens when you go swimming after you've eaten a big lunch at the beach? You're gonna get cramps and drown, right?"
mhm.
Except you're not. It's just a wives' tale, but everybody heard it, so it became, well, that had to be true. Abraham Morgan Taylor is a Harvard-based urologic oncologist, and he realized that I'm not going to tell you the details, that testosterone was not a problem. He proved it. Today, we know men with low levels of testosterone have a higher chance of getting prostate cancer. And if they do get prostate cancer, it will be a worse prostate cancer. In other words, testosterone does not exacerbate or cause prostate cancer. You can pick up the phone and dial 100 different urologists at random, and 95% are going to tell you the exact opposite. And if you had called me 15 years ago, I would have told you the same thing. But you look up the new studies, and it is not a risk for prostate cancer. So, in fact, I diagnosed my brother, who's on testosterone, with prostate cancer. Well, I got suspicious, and I sent him to a urologist. He got and his urologists up in New York are keeping him on his testosterone because of the study showing he's actually going to have a better lifespan on the testosterone. They didn't take him off of it, even with prostate cancer.
So with so much of this prevention, I mean, basically, I mean, this is definitely a modality for prevention. Is some of this insurable? Is any of it insurable?
Very few.
Or
You'd have to be unbelievably low on a lab value to qualify for what's called hypogonadism.
uh-huh.
Um, for all intents and purposes, assume it's not going to be.
Okay. Which is kind of crazy. See, that's the
Yeah,
thing
but
is I'm
you know
digging
what? Your
into
gym
this.
membership's not covered.
Yeah, see, that's the thing I'm digging into stuff like that's a great point. There's so many things that our healthcare system is geared towards providing for that's just kind of prolonging death versus actually keeping people from getting illness and sick. And
I mean,
so I find that striking.
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
there was a
especially,
study during COVID. Why they did a study, I don't know, but it was wild. A study came out after COVID that in Germany, men with low levels, and I can't remember what they defined as low, but men that they decided had low levels of testosterone had twice the morbidity rate if they were admitted for COVID and were entered into the ICU. In other words, men with higher levels of testosterone had twice a better chance of living. So I would tell patients then, I'd go, look, I mean, I'm not going to tell you that testosterone is going to keep you from getting COVID, but I'm going to tell you that if you do get COVID, there's a chance based on this study that it might keep you alive. Um,
yeah.
that would have been, well, if the guy had started off with insurance paying for his testosterone, he might have lived through that ICU experience. I have no idea, but you know, I don't know how insurance companies sees the world.
I think that's worth looking into, just to, I don't know, just to see I am on a mission to start talking to just the whole healthcare system as a major point of focus of getting more health and wellness into the conversation versus just this prolonged tail. I mean, like Peter Attia does a great job, of mapping out this whole deal. If you stay above that 50% activity line, once you drop, we're real good at keeping that tail long of basically you living well below your 50% ability for a long time. When the reality is we want to stay above and active as possible. 95, brother, just you're out there on a beautiful Asheville morning, boom, you're 98, you drop dead, but you were healthy up until that
Absolutely,
time.
yeah, that's the way to go.
That's the way we want to try to get this thing done. Well, with that, okay, so most of it's not going to be reimbursable. What kind of an investment are people going to be looking at making into this?
If it's gonna be men, if it's just gonna be, just basic, just testosterone replacement or optimization, as I like to call it. And again, and when I tell you that I don't really know for sure, and you're going, aren't you your own boss? And this is your business? The answer to that is yes. And guess what? My screen doesn't even show the money. And that's on purpose. So my screen, I have no idea when I'm, suggesting somebody's picking something. My staff goes through the financials. I'm going to say it's probably for most men, $3,500, $4,000. Women, 2,500 to $3,000 a year, plus or minus 500 in there.
I mean, and you think, and look, and folks, I don't do a pay to play podcast. That I have no financial interest in this whatsoever. I was just fascinated by Dr. Ibrahim's work. I mean, when you think about the crap we spend money on, and you're talking about
Yeah.
that is nominal For
I
crying out
mean,
loud, isn't
yeah. I mean, I somebody will pull up in a, or I see their keychain and I know it's a six-figure car and I know the tires on that, are gonna be 800, 1,200 bucks piece. But to be honest, my patients are pre-screened. I mean, they're told before they walk in the door, this is what your estimated
Yeah.
investment, because that's how we refer to it, is gonna be. And they hear that and there's a non-refundable deposit to talk to me. And 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 so that's pre-screened a lot of it. So yeah, my patients tend to show up. They're like Gus's patients. They tend to be in shape. They watch what they eat already. And they just realize that this is part of their life that's not being addressed by their typical provider. And they realize that they've watched shows like yours or listened to shows like yours, that it's at least worth listening to somebody to hear what I have to say.
Now, one of the things we haven't even talked about, and it's my fault. You said that you have. I want to talk real briefly about your first book regarding menopause, but then you've got another book coming out that's more male centric, correct?
Correct.
Okay, talk a little bit about that. When is it coming out, and how can people find it, and
I
where are they going to learn?
I'm in the middle of writing it, so
Oh,
it'll
God
it'll
bless
be
your
on
heart. I'm just joking.
Amazon. At the pace I'm going, the producer, as I call him, says that we're on track to send it, to publishing probably around January. I don't have a title for this one.
Okay.
But my female version, Sailing Through Menopause Without Losing a Rudder, it's because I'm a big sailor. Menopause is rocky. If you're a sailor and you're in a bad storm, losing a rudder is the worst thing that can happen. Sailing through menopause without losing a rudder, is what I named it. I'm sure that the male book is gonna have another nautical or sailing type of reference to it somewhere in there.
Okay. I want to get you back on to talk about menopause though. I want to have that
Okay.
conversation because I'm hearing more and more as I do some work up in DC, and a real good lobbyist friend of mine, she runs this women's health summit every year. And one of the things that they talk about a lot is menopause. And then I've got another friend who is the founder of a company, Forever Fuel, they make protein bars and supplements,
Mhm.
uh, and what really got it's a husband and wife team that own the company, and the wife Danielle Stanton, great, just very smart girl, very smart people. She and David are fantastic people. That's one of the things that got her into health and wellness is whenever she started going through perimenopause, and I didn't realize, Doc, what a kind of a and I guess there's a lot of research and women know, but it seems like it's kind of like the low T thing. I saw a lot more about low T. And again, I'm a man, so it's kind of like your reticular activating system. It notices what's coming at you,
Mhm.
I guess, as you think about. But when it came to menopause, as far as therapies and helping women deal with it, it seems like we're just now starting to talk more about it because I've had more people reach out to me to come on the podcast and talk about it. So I might want to get you back on here and I'll try to solicit some questions before we do that episode just to give some advice to women and have this exact same kind of conversation that we've had about
It
about
it's it I'm not gonna I don't use the word criminal. It just astounds me when I would go back to those just 2 facts, and I got way more other things to talk about when we talk about the menopause stuff, but the fact that a woman's risk of a heart attack becomes identical to a man when she loses estrogen at menopause, and osteoporosis, which leads to a woman breaking her hip, going to the hospital, getting pneumonia, maybe not coming out, that both of those can be very well prevented with estrogen levels at a proper level. And every physician already knows this. We all learned the Framington study. We know osteoporosis doesn't happen to women younger than menopause. But then why aren't we giving them what menopause is, which is ovarian failure, which means loss of the production of estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. But in those two cases, particularly estrogen. So, yeah, I could go on and on. Hell, I wrote a book about it. So we'll say that for the next episode.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, Doc, I know your time is valuable. How do people reach you? And I guess I mean anybody can come see you, right? I mean they don't have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
live.
And I'm licensed in lots of different states. So that allows me to do phone conversations. The medicine's considered to be practiced where the patient is sitting. But I'm licensed in about 20 something states. I've got offices in Asheville, North Carolina, and in Greenville, South Carolina. And going to builtmorerestorative.com, it's going to bring up my website, and you go to the contact us page and you fill it out. And then when it allows you to put in free text, they you just say, heard this on your show.
Terrific. Well, I'll have all of that in the show notes. And Dr. Ibrahim, this was fun, man. It's so good to meet you, even if virtually. I need to get a trip out to Asheville at some point, so I'd love to sit
Well,
down and break bread with you.
if your part is good, you got to come out here, man. This is gorgeous. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, we got hit by a horrible flood, but hey, everybody, we've recovered. We need your business. I'm not saying on mine because my building was intact, but downtown, the merchants are open, and a lot of people don't think that we're open. So this is my plug for where I live. We could use your visits.
you got it. Well, we're going to make one happen real soon. Doc, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
All
This
right.
was a blast.
This has been a blast. Appreciate
All right.
talking to you. Take care.
You bet.
The content provided in this podcast, The Healthy CEO, is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The opinions expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Healthy CEO. Any information provided by our hosts or guests, including any physicians who may appear on the podcast, is solely for informational purposes and does not create any doctor-patient relationship. Listeners are advised to consult with their healthcare providers before making any changes to their health routines. The Healthy CEO and its affiliates assume no responsibility or liability for any consequence resulting directly or indirectly from any action or inaction you take based on the information provided in this podcast.